Hello, welcome to this Dot Connector video cast to subscribers to Callum Chew. What I'm doing on this show, I'll do that just literally, normally releases on a Friday, but I think there's a London protest on this weekend, so it's released it early, and I thought we'd watch it together. I think it tells what death is at the end, and might run the nature of reality, and there's no death, which I keep banging on about. Also done 600 keeps providing good evidence about, so I'm just going to press play and watch it together. That's like I say, that's just his introduction music. We'll speak in a minute, I'll shut up. He can explain it better than me. And I think it's important to get one of these out, so yeah, there we go. And this will just go on bit shoot. Because YouTube will just take it down and stop me, maybe delete my account.
Hello and welcome to this week's David Icke Dot Connector. You can see it's a bit different. We have been with the producer Christiana here making a 13-part series for Iconic this week about the nature of reality, and it's brought us here to this beautiful place near a stone circle in Derbyshire called the Nine Ladies. And I wanted to talk about the fact that there is no death because of the way events are going to be going in the very near future. In fact, they're already going there at some level already. And it's going to be very, very important that people realize that death is an illusion. It's the death of the body. It's not the death of the true I, which is consciousness. So, Christiana.
Well, when I was around 20, I was given a book by Sogyal Rinpoche, and it was called the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. And I remember finding it quite difficult to get through it. But what really stood out to me is that a real point was made about the importance of humans learning how to die. And then I realized this is absolutely not at all spoken about in Western civilization at all. It's more like death is the end, and there's no kind of guidance in how we go about this. So what do you feel is missing? What should we know?
Well, if you want to control someone, you want to control the population through fear of the unknown, then persuade them that when the body dies, they die, and that's the end. Or they're going to be judged by a judgmental God who's been watching them throughout their life, whether it's a few seconds or 100 years, making notes for future reference. It's a divine version of the Chinese surveillance system. So you either believe you're going to be judged or that it's all over, and that creates fear. And fear of the unknown, of which death is the extreme example, means, for instance, you'll give any authority, a doctor or whatever, your power if you believe they will keep you alive a bit longer. This has been the whole foundation of the COVID hoax. Fear of death leading to conceding freedom to you perceive live a little longer. Whereas the ancients knew that death was not the end, but simply a transition, because we are consciousness. That's the I, consciousness. Consciousness is indestructible. Consciousness is always experiencing. And consciousness is vibrating on a frequency that the human eye cannot see, because the human sight, and indeed the very band of frequency that the body is decoding into a sense of reality, it is only able to see a fraction of what exists in the space that it's apparently looking at. So I'm looking now through a band of frequency called visible light, and yet within the same space that I'm looking at is infinity. Infinity is in the same space, just like different radio stations are interpenetrating each other without interfering with each other, because they're on different wavelengths, so all the different realities of infinity are in the same space without interfering with each other, unless you get close on the dial and there's interference, and that's when you get ghostly activity, where you get a visual interference, which is what we call a ghost.
Okay, I'm gonna have to take the fly out of your head.
All right.
There. It was interfering with you.
All right, okay.
With your reality.
Are we going?
Yeah, we're still going, yeah.
Where was I?
Sorry. I didn't want your shot to be ruined by a fly on your head.
There's no flies on me.
No. That was my decoding process.
So the ancients knew that the body was a vehicle for consciousness to experience this world, this human world, this tiny band of frequency. And so the vehicle has a cycle. You know, it's born, and then at some point it ceases to function, and we call that death. But the consciousness that's having the experience through the body goes on. And that's why when people have near-death experiences, they recall and they describe the same phenomenon. That when they died, when their body ceased to function, that they entered a completely different reality, where there was no time, where there was no space, there was no distance, everything was happening in the same moment, and they experience multiple dimensions of reality at the same time. This is because what the body is doing is decoding this band of frequency, and it's therefore focusing attention of the experiencing consciousness in that band of frequency. That's why when we're born and through our lives, our prime reality, in fact our only reality, most people, is the five sense world of the can I see it, touch it, taste it, and so on. And so that becomes, through the five senses, our perceived reality of the world. But what happens at death is that decoding process through the body, the brain, the genetic system ceases to function. And the consciousness is released from that focus of attention in this reality we call the human world, and suddenly it's freed to expand to a greater sense of self and a greater sense of reality. And that's all that's happening at death. And the ancients were preparing for it because they knew that this was going to happen. Whereas what's happened in the modern world, the more that this cult has taken over human society, is that's all been pushed aside. They want you to fear death. They want you to think death is the end, or at the very least some judgmental God is judging you, because that allows enormous amounts of control during a human life that wouldn't be there if you knew that this was just an experience within infinite experiences, and that when what we call death occurs, you just move on to another reality. You wouldn't have the intimidation of authority. You wouldn't give your power away to doctors who know next to nothing about what the body is anyway, in the hope that they would keep you alive for a bit longer because you fear death. And it's like you will do things more likely because you believe them to be right, if you know that whatever the consequences, you're eternal anyway, than if you think, well, I've only got 70 years and 10, biblically, so if I do something, consequences are death, well, I better not do it then, because I want to stay alive a bit longer. When you know that there is no death, there is only life, then those questions don't happen anymore, and the intimidation disappears, and the fear of consequences disappears, and so they have to hold this fear of death, because if you look at it, it's the foundation of everything. It's been the foundation of the entire COVID hoax.
Interesting. Yeah, absolutely is. And according to you, what keeps or sets in motion the reincarnation cycle? Because, first of all, do you believe in reincarnation?
Well, yes and no. it's always appeared very strange to me that there is a belief that to evolve, expand, whatever you call it, into greater levels of reality consciousness, you have to keep having bodily experiences on the same planet, which is, according to the projected size of the universe by mainstream science, the equivalent of a billionth of a pinhead. I mean, I've never really followed that. See, what you do is you keep having these lives on this earth, this billionth of a pinhead, and then you work your way up and get out of it, and I've never worked that one out. But I think what it is possible to do is first of all, consciousness from outside this reality to come in and experience it. And if it chooses to come in again for a reason, and I'll come to the reason in a second, then it can do that. But I think what we're actually looking at is a reality, an expanded, infinite reality that is based on love and happiness and joy and all the things we'd like this earth to be. But this is an isolated bubble disconnected from that. It doesn't mean there is not love and all those things within the bubble, but it means that there's a lot of real bad stuff going on in the bubble as well, increasingly dominating. And this bubble, I suggest, is actually a simulation. It's the equivalent of a virtual reality copy of Prime Earth. And Prime Earth is a level of reality which is how we'd like this Earth to be. It's about love and joy and happiness and mutual respect and all these things. And it's a very different, quote, Earth to this one. This is like a virtual reality copy. And I said after the turn of the millennium, just after the turn of the millennium, because I just got it in the moment, that we live in a simulation, like a virtual reality, and the walls of the simulation are the speed of light. You go beyond the speed of light, you enter a completely different reality. And this is why when you get close to the speed of light, things start to happen very strange. Time and everything starts to get very strange because you're leaving the simulation. You're leaving the frequency walls of the simulation. And so we are operating in like a virtual reality which has its own laws of physics, which has its own rules and regulations, and they're based on control and preventing consciousness caught in this trap from realizing its true self and realizing the true nature of reality. So, for instance, people will look through their eyes and they'll think that they can see everything in the space that they can see. Can you see everything in the space you're looking at? Of course I can. No, you can't. You're looking at a tiny band of frequency. That's all this is. And infinity lies beyond it, but you can't see it because the body is only decoding that band of frequency. So that's all your visual sight processes are going to show you. And so you can fall into the trap that you come into the simulation and then you die and that's it. When what's happening is you're coming into the simulation, you're experiencing it, believing it to be real, and at death, you're leaving it. And that's why the world outside the simulation is so different, as near-death experiences have described on endless occasions now. So you can come into the simulation and you can leave if you have a high enough frequency to leave the simulation. If you come in and you get caught in the low vibrational nature of this simulation, where you fall into levels of fear and anxiety and depression and ignorance
And belief
systems which hold you in little me belief systems, which mean low vibrational belief systems, then when you leave the body, your consciousness can be in such a low frequency state that you can't breach the walls, because there are other levels of this so-called matrix or simulation, not just the one we can see. There are other levels of it too. You can not breach those levels and get the hell out of it. And that, I think, myself, is the reincarnation cycle,
Yeah.
where you are leaving the physical level of the simulation, you're going to other levels of the simulation, and then you're coming back into the physical. And what you're trying to do, although you may not even realize it, is raise your frequency through this cycle enough to get out of the simulation and the walls of the simulation, which is what I suggest is that what's being described in the East, where they say you have to keep having incarnation after incarnation to
So you're perfect.
so you're perfect. Yeah. So you can get out of and break out of the reincarnation cycle. You're trying to get out of the matrix, and so people of a high vibrational, higher vibrational nature will leave here, and when they leave here, they don't have to come back. They may choose to come back, and we'll come to that.
Yeah.
But they don't have to come back. Whereas the reincarnation cycle is something else. It's where you're stuck in it and you're trying to get out of it, and that's what I think the reincarnation cycle.
I fully resonate with that, because in my one and only ayahuasca experience, and some people who have seen me before know that I'm always going on about that one ayahuasca experience. It's almost too much, but it was just so impactful for me. And one of the things I experienced was that I went out of my body and I wanted to explore the cosmos, the universe, but I got stuck. I hit a wall, and it was an invisible energetic wall, and it was around the planet, and I couldn't get out. And it felt like a very empty, depressing place that I was in. And I remember thinking, wow, I was fully aware as a person still, and I was thinking, okay, this ayahuasca experience is only a few hours long, but it feels like I've been here already 100 years. That's what it felt like. I was stuck there for 100 years. And there came a point that I was like, okay, is there any spirit? Can anybody please help me? And I couldn't hear anything. And I was like, oh my God, I'm lost here forever. I think the only thing I can do is to just go back into utero and go into another body, because I'm literally stuck. Now, fortunately, when I really felt like the ultimate despair, this spirit voice came to me and said that the only way to break through this barrier is to go back into the body and to expand consciousness, so that you break through the limiting boundaries of whatever matrix there is. And the years following that, I realized the importance of making that known to people, how important it is to work with awareness, and also later on I learned how important it is to work with the heart, because I started to see that the heart is a vortex in itself, and the more we are able to be with the heart and cultivate, that heart space, the more easy it seems to navigate both before death and after death. Would you agree with that?
Well, there's two things there. One, when you open your heart, you're opening your heart to love, this vortex, not talking about the physical heart. And when you open your heart to love, you're opening your heart to infinity, which is the whole foundation of infinity is love. I mean, let's get caught that this reality that we're experiencing is what infinity is like. This is a real bad example of how things can get very negative. But it's not an example of what infinity is like. Not at all. This is a very negative place, and we should understand that and not judge infinite reality by what we're experiencing here. It's not like this. This is a simulation which has been designed to entrap us. So when you open your heart, you're opening up to the infinite level, and therefore your vibration increases, and you can get the hell out of it. It's open hearts that take you out of the simulation, and it's closed hearts and closed minds that keep you in it. But the other point is, of course, what you've just described with the ring holding you in. That is an absolute common theme throughout the esoteric and the cultural world of the ancients. There's the esoteric concept of what they call the ring pass not, which is said to be a ring that you can only get through if you've reached a certain level spiritual enlightenment. Spiritual enlightenment, frequency high enough to get through it. So, and you know, I've written in the books about this. There are many concepts of this ring, this bubble, which only someone of a frequency high enough to get through it. Because it's like everything. You know, if you're within a frequency and you can't get through it, but you get to a higher. It's like you see a ghost go through a wall. I've seen it. How can a ghost go through a wall? Because to a ghost, on its frequency, the wall doesn't exist. It's like two radio stations. So when you get to a high enough frequency, you can go you can go through this ring, this wall of the matrix, anytime you bloody like. But if you're within the frequency of the matrix, then this what we call the speed of light is going to hold you in, and other levels of the matrix, like I say. So it's this is vital. You know, it's like people say we've got to fight the enemy. But if you fight the enemy, if you violently fight the enemy, then basically the negative force and the negative force, which is the force that holds the matrix together, are fighting each other. This force I call Wetiko, after what the Cree tribal group in America call this negative force. And where you look all over the world, and you'll see this negative force, right, which I call Wetiko, fighting itself. It gets this group of Wetiko consciousness to fight this group of Wetiko consciousness. This thinks it's fighting them for its own reasons, and it's right and it's just to be fighting them, but they're both fighting each other violently. So actually they're both the same frequency, generating that frequency to empower this matrix reality. And you know, it may sound trite, and I don't care, but it's love. It's opening your heart that is going to get you out of here. It ain't fighting the enemy and stockpiling weapons and shooting machine guns in all directions. That's going to keep you here, and it's going to entrap you here. And that's the trick. It's to get your opposition to oppose you in a way that keeps your opposition in servitude, instead of letting them know that this is the way out of here, and it's nothing to do with violence, it's nothing to do with fighting, it's to do with doing what you know to be right. Because once you open your heart to love, you do what you know to be right. And in the COVID era, as in every other era, but particularly now, doing what you know to be right is not cooperating with tyranny. And love will do that, because it will do what it knows to be right. And if you think, well, we've got to get violent, and we've got to fight the enemy, then, well, you know, go ahead. But A, the enemy has all the aces in terms of weaponry, and B, in fighting the enemy with anger and hatred and violence, you are condemning yourself to the very lair that the enemy has created.
So how do you deal with it? I mean, obviously we know that you do your speeches and everything in public, but in your daily life, how do you navigate through these crazy times?
Because I don't self-identify with David Icke. David Icke is the name of my brief experience called human. I am the consciousness having an experience called David Icke. And so we give ourselves names so we can tell each other apart and understand who we're talking about, etc. But I don't self-identify with David Icke. That's my experience. I'm the consciousness having the experience. And at the end of this life, whenever it comes, and it won't be soon, it's too much to do, then I will leave this body, I will leave this world, and I'll continue my infinite experience infinitely. So from that perspective, it puts what happens to you, you know, in your daily life into another context. You don't get intimidated by authority. Authority can't intimidate you, because there's nothing to intimidate you with once you get to that level of self-identity. I don't fear death, I welcome it. I just don't want to go before I've
yeah.
done everything I can to make a difference. But
Yeah.
when I go,
That's what
I
it's
mean,
about.
I'm going to be punching the frickin' air.
People
Because
think,
who
oh,
wants
it's
to stay
depression.
here forever?
Well, that's
I
a
mean,
different
the idea is
frequency.
to dismantle this nonsense, not stay here indefinitely. It's a completely different way of living your life and seeing your daily life. I know that I'm going to leave here. We're all going to die. Well, we're not. The body's going to end the cycle and we're going to leave. It's just a matter of when. And I would much rather leave a little bit earlier. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction, but I'd much rather leave a bit earlier doing what I know to be right than hold on a bit longer, keeping my head down and doffing my cap to demons.
Absolutely. Do you think that if you have the right consciousness, like if you're aware enough that you can in a way choose how you're going to die?
Well, I think if your consciousness is powerful enough and in connection to your expanded self enough, you can choose to whatever you're going to do. You can choose anything. And, you know, I've had experiences in the last month alone that have shown me how we control our own reality. The experiences that have shown me that if you're connected, how consciousness, awareness, whatever you want to call it, beyond this reality, how it can control events here and impact on events here, because there is a massive effort going on now. It's not an effort; its end is decreed. It is written, which is going to bring this whole nonsense to an end. We look now at the situation from a physical human level. Illusory physical level. You could be forgiven for saying we've got no chance, it's over, the human race is going to live in tyranny. But actually what we're looking at is the death throes of this whole cult control. Because to consciousness beyond this simulation, that which controls this simulation is a fly on an elephant's back. It really is. This is going to be brought down. It's going to be brought down over the next few years. It's going to be brutal for us a year or two, because this cult's going to throw everything at us. Because what happens when you're in your death throes and you know you're a cornered rat, you're going to thrash out. You're going to do everything you can.
Which is what's happening now, very blatantly.
Exactly what's happening now. You know, don't let's fall for the fact that this is gathering more control. It may seem like that on the face of it, but actually it's desperation to survive. And so this is coming down. But it's going to come down with some very challenging experiences. We're going to see a lot of people die. A lot of people who've had this jab, a lot of people are going to die. And that's why I'm saying it's so important now that people grasp the fact there is no death. Because it's going to help people in this period we're going through. Not just those who lose loved ones, and there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be in that situation, but also the awakened or the awakening, the people who are refusing the jab, who are pushing back on the tyranny. They also need to realize there's no death, and play the long game. The long game being infinity. And realize that this human life is just a tiny smear of experience within the infinity that we're constantly exploring. And therefore, you know, what happens in this life is not as important as we take it to be. Like it's everything, because this is all there is. No. You know, Martin Luther King said something very profound. He said many things profound, of course. And one of them, it was a long part of a speech, but I'll summarize it. That if you're 38 years of age, which he was then when he said it, and you have the opportunity to stand for some great cause, to stand up for some great noble reason, and you refuse because you fear the consequences, you fear dying, or you fear repercussions. He said, you may go on and live until you are 90 or 90 odd, but the cessation of your death at 90 will simply be a confirmation of the death of the spirit when you were 38. And it's because something dies in you when you have a cause to stand up for and you allow intimidation to overwhelm you. Something dies in you.
Spirit withdraws.
Yeah, you lose your self-respect.
Yeah.
And so many people have conceded their self-respect in the COVID era. And so when you know there is no death, when you know it's just a continuation, then the intimidation of what will happen to me, will they kill me, what will they do if I don't do what I know to be right, that gets diminished to nothing, and you just do what you know to be right. I've had many experiences in my life that have shown me that life goes on, that there is no death, and that people that we lose and people that pass actually only move a heartbeat away. They only move another frequency away, and they're still in the same space that we're in, but we can't see them anymore because the body which put them into this frequency we can see has now gone, and so the spirit, the true them, the true I, has passed to another frequency which we in our human form cannot see. And that's the only thing that happens at what we call death. And where they move to is invariably a place of great love, of great joy, of great happiness. I've communicated through various mediums through my life. Good mediums. I mean, they aren't all good. With shall we say, the departed, and they're invariably in states of love and joy and so happy and realizing that this is a tough place to live, a tough place to experience, because it is a very dark and negative place. Whereas where we gravitate to, if our frequency is high enough, is quite the opposite. And I've had an experience in my life. I'll just quickly tell you, because I want to get across this story, because it so encapsulates how there is no death. I knew a girl when I was at school in 1966 to 67, and I felt this incredible attraction, connection to her, and it was reciprocated but unspoken, never spoken, always just known. And I would look at her and I would see her eyes, and all I would see is her eyes, and everything else was peripheral vision. And this went on for 2 years like that, and in that 2 years I never even held her hand. She was 13 and then 14, and I was 14 and then 15. And then we wrote for a bit when I left, and I went to play football with Coventry City. I was still 15 at the time. And it broke up in a very strange way. And I never understood for 54 years why. I know now. But so I've not seen that girl since 1967, except briefly at a school reunion when I spoke to her for about 2 minutes before someone came and she went. And then, but I thought about her a lot over the years, wondered what had happened to her, and, what the hell, why did it break up? What was it all about? And then in 2018, I had a dream, a very vivid dream, and she was in it, she was in this dream. And I woke up and I thought, what the hell am I dreaming about her for after all this time? And then I started feeling her around me, and it's very difficult for many people to appreciate when I say that, what it means, but I just felt that she was around me. So I contact a medium friend of mine, and I said, look, I'm getting this. I've told her what had happened, but she knew nothing more than what I just told you. Do you pick anything up? And she came back to me and she said, yeah, she's just shown herself to me. she said, I've been scanning the internet trying to find a picture of a woman that looks like she looks, like she's projecting at me, because it's a projection. I mean, they're ageless soul by then, not a young girl at school, but that was an embodiment, an experience. And so she sends me this picture. She says, this is the nearest I can find. Well, I nearly fell off my bloody chair. Apart from it not being her, it was as near to her as you possibly get. She had a very distinctive hairstyle. And it was her. It was unbelievable. I was just totally shocked. I thought, well, this is getting more tangible now. And I felt her around me for a long time, and I could hear her communicate sometimes. And then I wrote a book called The Answer, and in that period she went back a bit into the background, and the same when I wrote Perceptions of a Renegade Mind. And then just over a month ago, just before that, I got a message from a lady in Cornwall called Sandy Ingham. Sandy Ingham, you can find Sandy Ingham at a website on the internet. And she is a remarkable woman because she's a medium, and she communicates with departed consciousness, souls, whatever you want to call them, for relatives. But then, around just after the turn of the 2000s, something strange started to happen to her. That she would go into a trance state, and she can't draw and she can't paint, as Sandy Ingham. But when she goes into this trance, she draws these incredible pictures of departed people for their relatives to give the relatives comfort that their body may have died, but they go on. Life is forever. And so she said that those that were communicating with her, the main communicator she calls Leo, they'd said to her, you need to contact David Icke. So she left a message with a friend of hers to say, if David's ever in Cornwall, maybe he could drop in and have a chat. And I thought, oh, that's nice. But what hit me was, I thought, no, this is significant. I've got to see this woman. So about, because you get it here, don't you? I've got to see this woman. So about a week, 10 days later, she gets an invite to come and do her drawings at the Ryde Spiritualist Church on the Isle of Wight, which is 3 minutes walk from my house. So she comes over and we meet. And we start talking, and she told me some amazing things, communicated to her about what I'm doing, and we're amazing anyway, and where this is going, and how it is. We are going to turn this around. But then she says, I'll draw a picture for you. If someone departed. So she drew a picture, and it was this girl. And it was remarkable because the picture, first of all, looked like her. And I watched her do it. I watched her go into the trance, and I watched her doing all this. And she usually does them in a few minutes. This one took about 15. And she showed me, and it was no doubt who it was. Immediately. There was no question. She had a particularly, like I said earlier, she had a particularly unique hairstyle. And Sandy got it completely. That which was painting through Sandy got it perfectly. Just as the first medium picking the picture off the internet got the hairstyle perfect. So anyway, then when I cropped the picture, it looked even more like her, right? But I've got my glasses on, so I can see the movement of the charcoal pencil and stuff like that. And then I took my glasses off. And this means that only someone with my eyesight could see this picture as I see it. And what happens is all the lines in the picture, which you can see it's a drawing, they fuse and it becomes a photograph. So it's a photograph of this girl.
A bit emotional.
Absolutely extraordinary. And since then, this soul has been around me constantly, and you know, you start to appreciate that when we judge people in this life as people who do great things and ordinary people. They're only ordinary people. I'm just ordinary. I am. But you realise that people that live apparently so-called ordinary lives, there's no such thing. From a soul level, they can be immense souls.
Absolutely.
And just living apparently ordinary lives. But,
I need to get to John
so
6 Sense and Jojo.
They've
been blown away off just the work they do.
Is actually an immense soul. And has communicated some phenomenally significant information to me. And so here is one medium finding a picture on the internet, and Sandy Ingham drawing this picture. And through Sandy Ingham, I was told things that only me and the girl know.
Wow.
That took place in 1966 and 1967. Now, how much more evidence people need for the fact that life is forever and life goes on? I mean, it's extraordinary. I mean, I'm sitting with Sandy and a great, lovely husband, Mike, in Cornwall at their house later, and she's telling me this, and what was coming out were things that only we knew about, conversations that only we had, situations that only we experienced. What was that? 67 to 2021. Look at the distance, and there we go. So life's forever, and it's going to be very important that we realise that in what's coming up.
Absolutely. And just one question about this person communicating with you. Where would she be if she does that? Is she in her place of, in her own frequency, reality when she communicates with you, or do you think she actually has to travel through some frequencies in order to reach the earth, or how do you see that?
Well, I think it's two things. You know, people say, when's the cavalry coming? Well, if the cavalry came and became this, it wouldn't be the cavalry, would it? It's high frequency. So you work to expand your frequency, and they lower their frequency, so that there is a point of contact, and that's when communication can take place. Because at that point, you attach through the same frequency, and so communications
paranormal activity. It's live, and it goes
one level
dead
of
because
frequency
we're going back into
the conduit
expanded reality.
The
That's why we
point
shouldn't
of
abuse
meeting,
spirit.
and then through down into the physical level.
Whole thing
This
I
is
don't
this is
agree
what
with.
psychics and mediums are doing all the time. They are able
What John does,
to
but
expand their awareness and tune into other frequencies of
I get why he
reality,
does it.
and get communications from them. Now, some can tune into quite low frequencies, some can tune into very high frequencies, and get phenomenally expanded, advanced information through. I mean, Sandy Ingham has scientists go to see her, and she's communicating information to scientists from these higher levels of consciousness. Yeah. You know, because just because the mainstream poo-poo this stuff, a load of rubbish, they're using it themselves. All these esoteric arts, they're using them. They just don't want us to know about them, so we don't use them for our benefit, you know?
Absolutely.
So it's, but we are going into an amazing time, very challenging for the next 2 or 3 years, but then into an amazing transformation, whereby all this stuff that's been hidden from us, all this esoteric knowledge, all this knowledge about the infinity of, and the fact that there is no death and life is forever, and all the joy and love that's out there, if only we can break out of this stranglehold of programming, all that is awaiting us. It's a we really are looking at the darkest time just before dawn.
Well, I'd like to add something, and that is when you spoke about, a part of our spirit dying when we're not standing in our authentic truth. What I've understood from Mama Nuisian, the shaman that I work with, the Andean shaman that is also in the film Divine Intervention, is that the death process can be facilitated and can be made a lot more easy if we consciously work on reintegrating the parts of the spirit that have left us throughout our experiences in life. And indeed, what you said, if we're not being true to ourselves, that parts of ourselves disappear, they can come back if we consciously make a decision that we want those parts to be reintegrated. So we have the full integrity of our spirit when we depart.
Yeah.
In which case the experiences will obviously be a lot more conscious and aware and peaceful.
Yeah, I tell you what I think happens. Every thought and every emotion, every perception it has its own frequency. So emotions like fear and anxiety and depression, they're low, dense frequencies. Why people feel heavy when they feel those things. And love and joy are light, high frequencies. So our perception dictates our frequency. So we have a five-sense mind, which is directly interacting with this reality through the senses. And people talk about the sixth sense. Actually, we have multiple freaking senses, but let's take the sixth sense as a symbol. The sixth sense is connecting us to other levels of reality. Right? Now, through this sixth sense, you connect to other levels of your consciousness. You connect to what people call soul, etc. If the five-sense level of awareness, the five-sense mind directly experiencing this reality, gets pulled into low-frequency states, it's getting disconnected from its other levels of consciousness, its soul. This is what this whole cult is seeking to do. This jab is part of that. This jab is designed, this COVID jab, to actually do that. And so this becomes isolated. And when it becomes isolated, it's at the mercy of the information that it's receiving at this level, which is coming from the media and social media and all that stuff. So this is the disintegration. This is the separation that's taking place. And see, this is why when you open your heart and your frequency rises, you end the separation, because your frequency, your five-sense level frequency, expands and increases and quickens to reconnect with soul. And this is what, in the shaman's language, is this reintegration that you were describing. From my perspective, which is the same, I would describe it in that way, that it's about frequency. You get pulled into these low frequency perceptions, you get pulled out of soul, and you raise this frequency, you reintegrate. And if you leave this world as one unified consciousness, well, you're going to whip through that. You're going to whip through that that outer limit of the matrix, a piece of cake.
I love the way you just described that. It's very visual, and it makes complete sense. Thank you.
Well, I hope it's made some difference to some people, because we really do need to understand there is no death. Only life. That's all there is. Thanks.
Thank you so much, David.
The coronavirus pandemic started in China. Oxygen, medical supplies, and hospital staff.
There you go. Fantastic.
Stage 1, you create
chat and put my perspective on it.
A manufactured virus.
Yeah, that's just the end. Looks like the video to the end.
You want a reaction, and you
it's
want
just
them to either say, do something, or you want them to accept what the authorities suggest must be done. So one of the agendas is to massively cull the population. They want to reduce the numbers.
That's David Alex. Advertising booklet speaking in 2009. Oh, pretty accurate. Except during the virus, there is no COVID-19. The virus never isolated us, so it exists. Boom. There we go. It smashes straight into the stopper as I say when the video ends. Well, that was absolutely first class. That is my favourite thing of all time. David, I talk about that. That is my top spot. Come on. You might guess I've enjoyed that. I love it so much. Because it's true, and I know, I have a family. My brother Bradley is a skeptic, and it comes out with all sorts of stuff that it is the program I want you to believe. But I think deep down he wants, but I think we all want to. Well, what more evidence do we need? And all these mediums be like, oh, well, they're going on the internet. Yeah, but they got the information accurate, and chances are, with the information and the projected imagery, to get it right, pick out a photograph, 1 to 1 chance. So, all mediums work in different ways. So this is why I want to show this to John Sixcents and Jojo. Because we are eternal. We are the true I. There is no physical. There's only... I'm not going to go over here. The great man speak himself. But this is the most important thing that we need to know, and what's being hidden. They can't stop figuring out. But in the next few years, they're going to get darker and darker, like you said. But then we will get through it. In 2024, it won't be down by then. We'll start to come through it, though not seem like it. But eventually, it's coming down. But life's eternal, so no matter how dark it gets, it's eternal. And we need to realise this. This is by the work that John Sixcents and Jojo are doing, and all everybody else is vital. So I'm going to try and get this done. Share it to him. I'll do it on this device. Got technicals. I'm not very good at what I'm like. Don't get it, but it works. I can share on that, but not on that, and I can just on that and on this. I don't know. But yeah, that's cheered me up. That has cheered me up. I was in a bit of a mood before. I'm not gonna lie, but that has cheered me up as it should do. That doesn't cheer you up, nothing will. Okay, so, but yeah, just people need to just get this out to as many people as possible. Not say you must believe this, but listen to the information. That's all we need to say. Please listen. And if they don't want to, go, okay, fair enough. And if they shout and bawl and go into dense frequencies, because people will respond like that, unfortunately. But you will get people who are open to it and go, you know what, Lee Steele goes to Britain. That'd be good for him to listen to. Anybody, I'm just using that as an example of a skeptic who's very respectful, obviously, that into esoteric stuff, obviously. So, yeah, sound like Ian Bell now, I don't know, obviously. Bless him. One of the best batsmen that ever lived. He underachieved, in my opinion, going on to cricket now. But that's switching between different levels of awareness, so... Switching between different levels of awareness. I can't speak, I'm so excited. I just love... Oh my god, that is just... orgasmic for me, in a good way. Because I love watching the paranormal stuff, but when you listen to everybody talk about it, and it just, everything that I watch doing, it's confirmation that keep going. And it's just communication. That's why Ouija boards aren't scary. They got just bored with letters on. Grow up, people. Man up. If you don't like Solomon, man up. And I know and I get why people do that, but I don't think we need to do that, because spirits communicate anyway. And I always try and be respectful. I might be a bit firm if I come across something nasty, but that's just a low level frequency spirit. It's like, well, why do spirits scratch if they're not demonic? Because they've left this frequency band and not advanced and still doing nasty things after they've passed on. That's why. That's why. Charles, the spirit of Charles, who John comes across, and as the whole cemetery ruins, scratched him once. Probably why I ended up in stinging nettles, because it's still there's a thing. But to get him out, I would try and say, look, I know you've done bad stuff, but you can expand your consciousness and move on. I believe you should try and move everything on if they want to be moved on. If they don't, they don't. And some spirits don't, good or bad, so, or indifferent or whatever. So, that's just my views on it. That we may need to change the way we talk to spirits. I've said this before, but that's constructive criticism, which the trolls can't do. It's what they can, they choose not to. But that's what we need to do. So, yeah, I'm going to leave it there. Alright, take care. Okay, bye.